Here's the anxiety, here's what might be driving in part some of the use of tobacco, and treatment for a mental health condition, a tripling of the odds of needing treatment for a mental health condition. Treatment's a good thing, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a good indicator of mental health challenges because there's a third party that decided that folks needed a treatment. And here's information you may not have seen, and that's adverse childhood experience relationship with our ability to engage in work-life activities. This is worker injury going from 3.6% in the last, so the question was, in the last month, were you injured on the job or did you have a work-related illness? So 3.6% of the population with 0 ACEs, over 10% of the larger ACE score. So this data is now being used by our Labor and Industries Department to look at whether our way of helping injured workers makes sense, given how much of the challenge is driven by ACEs. This is missed work, and one of the most important things for business is something very simple. Do your employees show up physically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually? Are they showing up for work? So this slide, very helpful when you're talking to the business community about the importance of helping families to protect children. In Washington, we could see that from the statistics that ACEs would increase, ACE scores would increase from one generation to the next unless we interrupted them. And so we were curious, is that happening in our state? So we created a statistical bridge with our Healthy Youth Survey to learn about ACE prevalence in our 10th graders. And what we found was alarming. In Washington, about 26% of adults have 3 or more ACEs. About 26% of adults have 3 or more ACEs. In our typical 10th grade classrooms, among kids that have stayed in school, 42% have 3 or more ACEs. So if you hear teachers, it's likely that you're seeing some of this differential in Minnesota, hopefully not as big as that. I don't know, again, I haven't run your numbers. But you're probably seeing an elevation of ACE scores in your young people than you have in the adult population, because that's just the statistics of how ACEs transmit from one generation to the next. When we hear teachers saying, it's different now than it was 10 years ago, folks in our state used to say, it's not different. It is different. Mm-hmm. When we hear 10th graders saying, you just don't get my life, it's probably because we don't get their lives. It might be because they're carrying a different burden in their lives. And so that's what I mean by opening the space for people to tell the truth of their experience without feeling like telling the truth of their experience means they won't have opportunity, which is sort of the way it sometimes works in our majority culture, unfortunately. So I just want to show you, we're using data in Washington to try to create a clearer and clearer picture. So in our elementary school children, from the work of Dr. Chris Blodgett, he's doing amazing work out of Washington